The art of thinking clearly. Before I understood how the mind really works, I believed something very simple. I believed I was thinking clearly. I assumed my decisions were logical. That my opinions were reasonable. That when I chose something, I chose it for good reasons. But life kept proving me wrong. Not in dramatic ways. Not with big disasters. But with small regrets. Small mistakes. The kind you notice only later. When it's too late to change them. I stayed in situations that no longer made sense. I trusted people who showed warning signs early on. I followed paths because they felt familiar, not because they were right. At first, I blamed circumstances. Then, I blamed bad luck. Eventually, I had to look closer. The problem wasn't the world. The problem was how my mind was quietly interpreting it. I began to notice that my brain loves shortcuts. It wants fast answers, clear stories, simple explanations. That once helped humans survive. Quick thinking saved lives. Hesitation meant danger. But the modern world is different. The same shortcuts, now, lead us into invisible traps. We don't notice them because they feel natural. They feel like common sense. That's what makes them dangerous. I saw how easily I defended ideas. Just because they were mine. How quickly I rejected information. That made me uncomfortable. How often my emotions decided first. And my reasons followed later. I thought I was being rational. In truth, I was being human. This realization didn't make me feel stupid. It made me feel relieved. Because it meant my mistakes were not personal failures. They were shared patterns. The same patterns appear in relationships, in business, in politics, in history. People repeat the same errors. Not because they are careless, but because their minds are built this way. Once I understood that, I stopped trying to be perfect. Instead, I focused on being aware. Thinking clearly has very little to do with intelligence. It has much more to do with noticing. When your mind is supporting you, and when it is working against you. Being smart does not protect us from mental traps. In fact, sometimes it only helps us explain our mistakes more elegantly. I learned to slow down at the exact moment I felt most certain. Because certainty often feels like truth. But it is usually comfort wearing confidence. Comfort feels safe. But safety is not accuracy. When you pause, when you question your first reaction, something changes. Your decisions become quieter, less dramatic, less emotional. And strangely, your life becomes calmer. Not because you control everything, but because fewer things control you. I began to notice that many of my decisions were not really decisions at all. They were reactions. Something happened, and my mind immediately filled the space with a story. A story about why this happened. A story about who was right. A story about what it meant about me. And once the story felt true, I stopped looking any further. I noticed this most clearly during a conversation. I couldn't stop replaying long after it ended. That is how most thinking happens. We don't search for truth. We search for confirmation. If an idea makes us feel smart, we protect it. If it makes us uncomfortable, we push it away. I stayed in projects that were clearly failing, not because they would succeed, but because I had already invested time. Stopping felt like admitting loss. Continuing felt like hope. But hope can be deceptive. The past does not become more valuable just because we refuse to let it go. Letting go is not weakness. It is often the most rational choice. I also had to face something uncomfortable about myself. I liked feeling right. Being right feels good. It feels safe. It feels like control. But the need to be right often prevents us from learning anything new. I noticed how often I defended my opinions, even when the evidence was weak. Not because they were true, but because they were mine. I remember clicking send. Already feeling regret before the reply even arrived. That was when I understood that thinking is not just logical, it is emotional. Our beliefs are connected to how we see ourselves. Changing a belief can feel like losing a part of who we are. So, we resist. It takes courage to pause and say, I might be wrong. For a while, I worried. This calm meant I was losing ambition. I wasn't. I was losing noise. As time passed, I stopped trying to eliminate mistakes. That was never realistic. Instead, I tried to reduce the damage they caused. Being wrong is not the problem. Being stubborn is. I learned to respect uncertainty. When I felt unsure, instead of rushing to decide, I waited. There was a decision I delayed for weeks. That later thanked me for my patience. Waiting is underrated. In a world that rewards speed, waiting feels like weakness. But waiting often protects us from decisions we would later regret. Much of our suffering comes from trying to control what was never ours to manage. Other people's reactions, other people's opinions, the future. Letting go of that control does not make life smaller. It makes it lighter. The clearer my thinking became, the less dramatic my life felt. Urgency softened. Noise lost its power. Not because life became easy, but because I stopped adding unnecessary stories to it. In the end, I realized something simple. Thinking clearly is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It is a practice. Some days, you notice your mind quickly. Other days, you don't. That's normal. The goal is not perfection. The goal is awareness. Awareness gives you a small pause. And inside that pause, life can begin to move in a different direction. Not every thought deserves belief. Not every feeling demands action. Not every question needs an answer right now. You do not need to fix your mind. You only need to understand it. Once you do, it stops controlling you from the shadows. And quietly, that is where a calmer life begins.
If this video changed how you think, the next one will change how you feel. It's a world bestseller that shows why emotions matter more than IQ. Up next, emotional intelligence.